Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, as the weather gets cooler, people think about doing things indoors, but it's still a great time of year to go outside. And today my guest has experience in the outdoors in the region, Chris Pistole with the Wildcat Glades Audubon Conservation Center. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Judy.
This is a time of year where we see leaves changing. I imagine you're still seeing a lot of people coming to the Conservation Audubon Center.
Oh yeah, fall is one of the two great times of year to get outside here in Missouri. Of course, spring is the other time. Summer tends to get pretty hot and humid, and winter, people don't like the cold as much, and not as much of interest outdoors in terms of the trees and the plants and everything. So yeah, spring and fall are great times to be outdoors enjoying our Missouri habitats.
Great. Well, I know it's been a while since we've recorded a program, so I thought for our viewers today, kind of give an update and find out what's happening as well as what has happened. And I guess big news this time is you're celebrating a special anniversary year.
Yeah, that's right. In 2017, we're actually completing a one-year celebration of the 100th anniversary of Wildcat Park. So the Audubon Center has only been there, it'll be 10 years next year for it, but 100 years for Wildcat Park, and that's pretty impressive. And interestingly enough, it kind of coincides with the 100-year anniversary of the National Park Service, which of course we've been hearing a lot about this year, and we'll continue to hear about.
So a lot of interesting history there that 100 years ago, people in the city of Joplin were saying, we're going to set this land aside as a park.
Yes. So Wildcat Park actually wasn't the first name for it. It's gone by several different names, one of which was Spiva Park, but it really takes the name Wildcat from the Wildcat Spring that is still located there, very close to the overpass from I-44. Right. And there are two stories. One is that it got the name Wildcat Spring because somebody had seen a wildcat there, or maybe had shot a wildcat, which would be a bobcat. Right. That we would have in this area. And then the other story is that there were wildcatters, and those were kind of independent miners who struck out on their own trying to find a rich vein of ore in the surrounding hillsides and bluffs. And we do have some of those caves in the park that probably were natural originally, and then we know that they were explored, and the miners went back in and dug a little bit deeper.
So tying into Joplin's heritage of the mining history as well.
Yeah, definitely. But it really comes back to the water, and the big draw was Shoal Creek. And I know we've got some old photos that maybe we can pull up and show of people enjoying Shoal Creek. This is, of course, Reddings Mill Bridge, kind of a historic icon in the area. And now this is one of our trailheads. So people can park right here, and they can walk out on the bridge without worrying about traffic.
Right, the bridge is no longer used.
Yeah, now we have the new bridge right next to it. And Grand Falls, that's what this picture is of. I love seeing the dress that people are in. This would have been probably around the turn of the century.
Right.
And then actually in Wildcat Park, so there were a lot of things that were there, and including concessions. There was the changing room, as we see here, so people could change into their swimwear, which was much different back in those days.
So they would drive out of the city to the park. At that time, the park was a distance from Joplin.
Yeah. People would come out in droves. This was the place to be seen, and where many young men would take their dates. Of course, there would have to be a chaperone along with them. So lots of swimming that went on out there.
So it really became a social site for the city of Joplin.
Very much so. There were boat rentals. You just couldn't believe all the things that went on out there, including a water slide. Only in those days, it was a wooden water slide.
And I'm careful,
if people go out there, and if they're looking at the spring and they look up on the bluff, they'll see a big metal tower that actually was a water tower. And so the water was pumped from the creek up into that tower, and then that was what
The water flow
went
came down the slide.
slide. Yeah.
So amusement park within itself.
When we had our 100th anniversary kickoff celebration at our Shoal Creek Water Festival this year in August, we actually recreated a water slide with the help of the Joplin Parks and Rec Department, and they brought some pieces from an older water slide that had been removed from one of the city pools, and they were able to get that set back up. We had a pump and the water, and so people could slide back down into Shoal Creek like they would have done 100 years ago.
So really it was a recreation area site and transitioned over the years, obviously. And for many years the city had different uses for it. We've had baseball fields, softball fields out there. But you say it's 10 years, and people may not realize it's been actually 10 years already since you started the park for your use.
That's right. And so we've grown and will continue to grow through the years. We depend so much on the community support, and so we're just thrilled every year to do our community report, which comes out in our newsletter. And in that, we just tell the community, you know, like how many visitors we've had. Also, there's a lot of interest in the financial aspects, and there still are a number of people I encounter in the area that don't realize truly how we're funded. And they often figure that we're tax funded, when in reality we are not. We're primarily funded by fees, grants, and donations. So we're always seeking new entities, new corporations that want to partner with us. We had a great one in this past year, the Pediatric Associates of Southwest Missouri. They teamed up with us so that we could offer our preschool programming at no cost. We doubled the number of programs that we offered, and since that has been offered free, we've been able to almost double the attendance as well at each of those programs. So it's been very successful.
So going beyond just we're having an area that's for conservation and saving to the educational and having more activities in there as well.
Yes, and I know in this past year, I think we had over 4,000 program participants. So those are the people that actually come out and they register in advance, or sometimes they show up the day of, although we tell people we never
Please try not to do
guarantee
that,
space. And they've gone through a program with us on many different topics. You know, the majority, of course, are conservation related. They're not all bird related. Audubon is much more than just about the birds. We're about healthy habitats for all species, and including humans too. It includes some cultural and arts programs as well. So nature's just a wonderful unifier. It helps bring a lot of people together, and it's something that is extremely important for the health and welfare of any region.
I know you mentioned your newsletter, which I have a copy of here, but I'm just looking at the topics just for the viewers. You know, there's children's programs, you know, illustrating children's books. I see Native American stories for kids. There's so many falling for leaves, natural wreaths for when they get into the Christmas season, Christmas crafts. So a lot of different variety of interests. Who helps coordinate these programs?
Well, I do most of that as the education director, but we have guest speakers, guest presenters that come in and help do a number of these. I certainly don't have enough skills and talents to do all of the programs. And our volunteers are so important, and we're always looking for more volunteers. So people who are interested, I tell everyone I come in contact with, there are only two prerequisites. One is that you love nature, of course, but also it's important that you like working with people. Because that's what a nature center really is. It's a way of connecting the people to the nature that is in that local area.
So people can find this information, of course, online as well. I have a hard copy or a written copy of your presentation and so forth. Now, briefly on the screen, we had a picture of the bridge that we talked about earlier with a lot of high water. And I think the last time we talked, you had recently, just shortly before that, had a major flood in the park. And people might be curious. The picture that we see now, that was about, last December when you had the major floods.
Yes, one of the, I guess you'd call it a highlight of the year. It was certainly a momentous occasion, was the flood, and it began right after Christmas, and I believe the river, this is Shoal Creek pictured here, and the Reddings Mill Bridge, the water crested at 24.3 feet, I believe it was, and that was around December 27th, so just a couple days after Christmas. And The previous record was about 19 feet.
So it was quite a bit
over the previous record, and it did a tremendous amount of damage to the park. It washed out a section of our handicapped accessible trail. The good news is we've just recently learned that we do have some funding. I believe it was some FEMA funding that we were able to tap into along with the city of Joplin that is going to help repair that handicapped accessible trail. We lost some signs and kiosks with information. We lost some of the nesting boxes that we had put up for several different bird species.
Right.
So it was really quite something. And
but when you afterwards, that we were talking at that time, there was a lot of volunteers. People stepped forth to even just help with the cleanup afterwards.
Yes,
we talk about volunteers.
It was really good to see the community rally around us and our work days to help clean up. And we're still in the rebuilding
right. It takes a while to get to that part.
Definitely.
Right. Well, you mentioned projects and things going on. I know that grants play a big role. And last time I think we were talking about, you had some upcoming projects for 2016 that were involving, I know one I can recall, youngsters or students.
Yes, so we do have many grants, and it really helps us to meet our bottom line for the center. So as those grants expire, we're of course always writing new grants and seeking out foundations that are willing to help us out. But this grant that we got, it's actually been almost a year, and we've completed most of that grant. Was an IMLS grant, and IMLS stands for the Institute for Museum and Library Services, and it's a federal agency that helps oversee the distribution of different grant dollars that are available, mostly to museums. And in a sense, when we made obviously a good case in our proposal,
you're preserving.
Right. We are. The resources there in the park are basically our museum collection. And so we worked with the Joplin middle schoolers, 7th graders in particular, and the middle schools here have been coming out to the Audubon Center and Wildcat Park for a number of years to learn more about aquatic ecosystems. And it's really fun for them. It's very hands-on. And they actually get in the creek and help to sample.
So it's a hands-on field trip when you hear about traveling to the park.
Roll up your shirt sleeves and your pant legs.
Walk in there and then get right in the water.
Yeah, definitely. And so this grant, though, what's different about it, the new twist on it, was to try and inject some more STEM learning. And for those people who don't know, STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And most of the schools in the U.S. have realized, based on testing and other evaluation, that we're lagging behind much of the rest of the world in STEM education. Right. And that's critical. Think about how much we use science and engineering and technology in our everyday lives. So we want to encourage more students to pursue those fields, and so that's why schools are trying to inject more STEM learning into their curriculum. So this grant lets us take some mapping software called ArcGIS Online, produced by a company called Esri. And they made that software available to all schools at no cost.
Okay, so they're getting the hands-on use of the technology in their schools.
That was a huge donation that they made to all schools in the U.S. Normally they would have to buy a subscription. So we teamed up with the Joplin School District and the 7th grade middle school science teachers to get the students out there using some of the technology and creating maps. And the bird that tied this all together was the prothonotary warbler, and I think we have a shot of the prothonotary.
So this is tying into mapping, but a specific bird that you're following and mapping and so forth. So this is what you would find.
Yeah, their nickname is the swamp, and I think you can probably guess how they got that nickname. They're so bright yellow, just gorgeous. They are not a goldfinch, as some people might think. Those birds will come to your bird feeders. Prothonotaries typically would not come to a bird feeder. They're insect eaters, not seed eaters. Okay. And so we had put up these boxes. We've actually been doing this for 4 years now, gathering information about their nesting success. And so we thought they're kind of an indicator as to the health of this aquatic ecosystem in Wildcat Park, in Shoal Creek, and the riparian corridor along the edge. So we bring the students out, like you see here in this image, And they use tablets, this technology, and Google Sheets, Google Docs, and a collector app, it's called, that's through ArcGIS Online, to gather the data, the information. So the great part about this whole project is science are collecting real data in real time and using that to learn about science.
So this is going on to, quote, real world use. That they're
Absolutely.
doing.
It's a real science project. They're not just reading about it in a book. And so the takeaway from it is tremendous. The students get so much out of the experience. They're actually helping us to monitor these birds. The prothonotary warbler is declining, so there is a lot of concern about their population and why they're declining. So it's a real science project, and that's what's exciting right now. There are so many opportunities for ordinary citizens to get involved in science projects with the use of the internet and home computing.
Well, you mentioned the birds, and I know you had not only the youngsters, but we had a picture up briefly that university, Missouri Southern students involved in this project as well.
After the flood there, we had the picture of the flood in Reddingsville Bridge. It was last March that we had contacted the biology club here at Missouri Southern, and they were excited to come out and help us build new boxes to replace those that got washed away and to install them. So we like working with the universities as well as the elementary and secondary public schools and private schools for that matter as well. So it's really great experience for the students, and for those students who are interested in a career in biology and especially conservation, they walk away with this hands-on experience and something also to put on a resume.
Right. Do you ever find that some of the, say, the university students, the older students, in turn come out and want to be volunteers? They're learning so much they want to take part in your programs?
We have seen that. Just this past year, we had 2 interns from Missouri Southern that came and helped. One with the IMLS grant project, with this aquatic ecosystem field trip using the technology, and then another through the summer, and she's actually going more into biology education. So very good for her as a future teacher to get to experience working with students in the field and getting a deeper understanding of some of the science and conservation that we undertake.
So opportunities for all ages, and when you look at the booklet, I know a lot of opportunities for not only students and educators, but families of all ages, people, even down to the youngsters. You have programs in here for little kids as well.
Yeah.
Future programs for the youngsters as well.
We have, yes, those preschool programs I mentioned earlier, and one of the ways that we can really make a deeper connection with our audience is through the summer camp programs, and we have done that since we opened. And we don't have a lot of weeks set up in the summer, but those kids come out every day for an entire week. And so we really get to get a little bit deeper into ecology and exploring. Exploring is such a wonderful thing to start at an early age, but to continue exploring and learning all through their entire school career. So we're really glad to have the interns that can come and help with the programs. We depend so much on them and the volunteers.
Now, Noel, you mentioned grants, and I've heard that you also have another program coming on for the youngsters in a playground. How does this, people may say, well, how does a playground tie into a conservation Audubon Center?
We're even debating what to call this because we don't want to mislead anyone. When you hear the word playground, you typically think of asphalt and swings and slides and that type of a playground. And this is not like that. It is called a natural playground or natural play area. And a number of nature centers, including a few other Audubon centers, have already built these. They're becoming more and more widespread. And it stems from some research that has been done by university faculty and authors who are interested in this subject of the disconnect between so many youth today and nature. And it might seem counterintuitive that we're doing more technology in the program we just spoke about, when technology is, in some cases, kind of the culprit.
It's keeping the kids from going outside and having fun.
Yeah, but since they like the technology and they feel comfortable with it, and it is important to learn, that's how we came up with that idea for that previous project of getting the technology more into our field trip experience with the students. So this one, though, is with the younger kids. It's primarily targeted towards the preschool age and on up into, I would say, as high as those that are 8 years old. So you and I probably grew up in an era when, we spent most of our free time outdoors playing.
Yeah. The time I go outside and play all day, Mom calls you home for dinner, right?
I know, talking with you previously, and we've talked about great memories of, exploring outdoors. And yeah, so it was kind of a different era, a different time then. And now so many kids, if you ask them what they like to do in their spare time, it's all focused on computers and games, computer games.
Indoors, doing things like that.
Yeah, and the research that's coming out now, and it's actually not that new, it's been at least 10 years or even longer since they've known some of these facts, that it's really having an impact on child development. And it's important in normal child development that kids do have time to explore and discover the outdoors and nature. And so that's how this nature playground idea has grown and developed. So there'll be things like logs to climb on. So there's a physical aspect of it, very important for children to develop the physical skills that they need. They've actually found that, the kids that are always sitting, we know there's a childhood obesity problem. They're not as active, but they also don't develop some of the motor skills and coordination and balance that are important. And so getting outside and playing help to develop those.
It pays off to learn how to climb a tree. Climb a log, right?
Yeah, and even just playing on those logs and stepping stones. So there'll be some elements like that.
Right.
And of course it won't be 100% foolproof. There's always going to be some risk associated with being outdoors. You can't avoid all risk unless you're in a padded room, but nobody wants to live like that. So we want kids to experience nature and the outdoors in this natural play area. There'll be other elements like a short little tunnel that they can go and explore, and we'll tie it back into kind of a nature and conservation message. We're really excited. One that we found at another site was a giant eagle nest. So it will be built to look like an eagle nest. The children will have a chance to build forts. That's something I did as a child. I don't know about you.
But yeah, getting out there and putting something together in the outdoors.
Yeah, so it also ties into creativity and critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
Great.
So there's a lot of potential here, and we hope to have the playground installed and ready to reveal for Earth Day next year.
So spring of 2017, ready to go. So people keep an eye as they go out to visit, kind of get us some preview. Something's happening on there. I need to see what's happening.
Yes.
That's great. So that's through a grant. Then you mentioned funding and the importance of grants and tying things together. Getting people throughout the community involved beyond just coming to the center. I know there's Audubon National has efforts to try to just get more people aware of the importance of what's happening.
One of the things we did, I believe it was last fall, was we did a complete revamping of our website. And talking about technology, we know that's how people often decide, where they want to go or what they want to do with their time. So you Google it or you look up these different facilities, their website. So websites are extremely important, and I'm really pleased with the result. We had staff that worked many hours on revamping the website. It was not an easy job, but we feel it's interactive, which is important, and there's lots of good information there that people can find out. One of the new projects that Audubon has just recently revealed is a program called Plants for Birds. And so if we can go to the national website, we can pull up, there it is. So Audubon has a strategic plan. They're typically made for a 5-year time frame, and they have different areas to focus on, different strategies. Some of those include water, which is something that we're already doing, and with the IMLS grant. Bird-friendly communities is a very big one and an important one that we can easily tie into. And so the Plants for Birds ties into bird-friendly communities. How can we make our local areas more conducive to having healthy bird populations?
And as you can see here, just a residential area. What can you do if you, quote, live in town to help the birds?
You know, in many cities and yards are kind of like deserts for birds and other wildlife. There's not a lot there for them that provides food or shelter in just a mowed lawn. And so many people love to garden. In fact, gardening is one of the most popular hobbies in America. I know I read some statistics in the past, and I think it was #1.
People like to get outdoors. That's their chance to be creative outdoors, right?
So if they can plant some native plants that are actually going to be much more beneficial to birds and other wildlife, they're taking their yards and basically kind of transforming them into more of a refuge, an area that birds can find that important food and shelter in.
So this website would lead them to the link that if they want to find out what's going to grow in Joplin, Missouri, they can get a link for what's happening in this part of the country.
Yeah, you type in your zip code and they've already got selected based on, you know, the growing zones for plants. And they can find out what should grow well in their area. And they also have links to local centers such as ours, and people are always welcome to contact us if they have questions about what they can grow in their area.
So that's another role that you play, people may not realize, being a resource of information.
Definitely, yeah. It helps me to stretch my mind. I often get questions that I maybe don't know the immediate answer to, but I can certainly access a lot of other resources and look up some of that information and fill them in. So, you know, it's an opportunity for me to grow as well, but it gives me a chance to utilize some of the biology training and coursework that I had in my formal education.
Practical application and tying that. Well, I know there's many ways people can get involved, but while we still have some time, they can go obviously to your website. You have a Facebook site as well that they can find out?
Yes, and our Facebook site, again, our staff is so good at keeping up with that. I try and go on there and answer questions people have when I can. The other staff, they will forward them to me, and they're very good at answering them too. And we have a very quick response time too. I'm always impressed to see when it's in the minutes, you know, not days, not hours.
You have a question, we'll answer it now for you.
Yeah, that's what we try to do. And so, yeah, there are other ways people can connect with us, and we just love this area, and people have embraced us, and 10 years it'll be next year. So
and you're there year round, so even though the weather's changing, still come out and visit and see how the different environment in different times of year.
Yeah, the trails are always there.
Great. Well, Chris, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out today and sharing information with our audience.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.